Okay, good morning. Happy Sabbath. We are the Fernando family, descended from this Fernando family that you are used to around here. I'm James. Rachel and Jude, the baby, are in the car. Jude's sleeping. And this is Liam. We have lived in Sierra Leone and West Africa for almost 5 years now. We moved there 5 years ago this September. So, just a bit of geography lesson. Sierra Leone is right on the coast, and it takes about 34 hours door to door. If you count all the buses, and sometimes we go by boat across the bay, and cars and airports. So far, we have never been the loudest family on the plane, so we're doing really well these 5 years. Sierra Leone is a developing country. Our hospital is there in the blue roofs. You can see a paved road there. That is the main one paved highway that goes into the capital of Freetown. So we live just outside the capital. It takes about an hour to get there. So the hospital is well positioned. Sierra Leone is a beautiful country. Oftentimes people think about just the bad things, but some of the best beaches I've ever been to are in Sierra Leone. This is the market in Waterloo. When we first moved, Rachel was going to the market to buy all our groceries, and it's a lot of work because you got to just find what you need in a bucket or on somebody's head, and it's all a barter system. There's no prices. It took me a long time. I got confused because they would say it was 2,000. And I thought that was, you buy two of this for 2,000, but no, it's just 2,000 for one. They just double it because it sounds cool. Stuff is piled on the street, so this is just the side of the road. If you need a pair of shoes, you hope you can find its mate somewhere in the pile. Proper waste disposal is difficult. Most of it goes into the streams. There is a waste disposal service, and they just dump it by the highway. And it's been interesting. Year by year, we see this dump growing and growing. I've never seen bulldozers in there until this year, so that's a new thing for us. Freetown is between the ocean on one side and then mountains on the other. So Freetown is a very cramped city, and so it is crowded. There are people everywhere in the streets. This is a building under construction, 5 stories, with bamboo scaffolding. I am always afraid whenever I walk under bamboo scaffolding, both for me and the people working up there. Because so much commerce happens on the street, we jokingly call it window shopping. It's because the market comes to your window. So we'll hand money to Liam in the back and roll down the window, and he'll put money out and they'll give him bread or whatever. So here's Liam doing some window shopping. Sierra Leone is a very interesting place. It's a mix of both traditional and modern values. I don't think our security knows anything about bros before hoes. But I thought it was funny, so I took a picture of him. Sierra Leone is filled with beautiful people, the majority of whom are Muslim. If you look online, the Muslim population is like 75% of Sierra Leone, and Christianity makes up the rest, and everyone still holds their traditional beliefs, whether or not you are Muslim or not, or Christian, it doesn't matter. The traditional demons and spirits, those are still a big part of everyday life. Our experience in Waterloo skews more Christians. The Christians tend to be more in the cities, and the Muslims tend to be more rural. Our day security, I just learned, is the assistant imam. And so he was cramming for Ramadan the other week, or a couple months ago. He was like reciting his thing over and over and over again because they had to memorize and present this thing from the front. So it happens to everyone, no matter what religion you are. The people are loving and kind and generous. We had a woman in the hospital who had hyperemesis gravidarum, which basically means you're pregnant and nothing you can do stops your vomiting. and she spent 3 days in our hospital with her head in a bucket, and she was still vomiting when she went home. But as she was leaving, she said, "Oh, this woman in the bed next to me, I feel really sorry for her. Let me pay some of her bill." And like that level of generosity where if you've got your head in a bucket for 3 days and you are miserable, to think about the person next to you, it's, I have a lot to learn from these people. They're hopeful and they're curious, and things that are boring or old to me are new and exciting for them. So it's always fun to share and learn from them. They dote on their children just like they do anywhere in the world. They sacrifice for their children more than I do. And since we're looking at pictures of beautiful people, here's Jude. We see interesting things. Custom-built sewing machine carrier for your bicycle. I don't know this guy. He was just walking by, and I said, "Wait, please, let me take a picture. This is really cool." So, mobile tailor. There's a lot of emotional whiplash in Sierra Leone because you can go from abject poverty to nice things just in a half-hour drive. So this kid in this trash pile is, that wall you see is our compound wall, basically. And people can't afford a trash pickup service, so they use our outside as trash. And he's holding a bit of wire. And I asked him, what are you doing? He's like, "Oh, I'm collecting wire to trap squirrels." And I've never seen a squirrel in Sierra Leone. I have seen rats the size of squirrels, so I don't know exactly what he's trapping. Here's Rachel in our new coffee shop that's like 45 minutes away. And it's a bakery, and they're teaching people, and it's nice and new. And it's just a lot when, this is outside our house and we drive in a little bit and it feels like we're in the West again. It's air conditioned. That's the main draw to the coffee shop, is it's air conditioned. Holidays are different in Sierra Leone. The wonderful thing about living in a Muslim country is we celebrate both Christian and Muslim holidays. So there are holidays all the time. It's wonderful. Just this Easter, I was driving and the police stopped me at a checkpoint and they said, "Salam alaikum." And I said, "Alaikum salam." And he's like, "It's Easter. What do you have for me?" Wanting a gift on Easter. And I'm like, "You greeted me as a Muslim, and now you're asking me for a gift for a Christian holiday." And he's like, "We're Sierra Leoneans, we celebrate everything." So yeah, seeing Liam play with the Christmas tree and remember it for the first time was exciting. This is our Christmas dinner. You'll notice a conspicuous absence of children. Jude was asleep, and Christmas was a Monday, so I was at the hospital, and we sent Liam to the babysitter so Rachel would have time to cook. And then it came time to eat dinner, and Liam is gone. And we call the babysitter, and they're like, "Oh, they took him off to this family member, and he's at their Christmas thing." And so we ate Christmas dinner by ourselves. It was wonderful. And Liam spent an African Christmas. So we had a peaceful, quiet dinner. It was wonderful. One of our projects this year has been building a compound wall behind our house. Our well was outside our compound, just in public space, and we had our well pump stolen, and protecting our water supply was important, so we raised some money and we built a wall. And so now we've got this nice place behind our compound, and so we have a new back door, and all those tires there, we're building retaining walls, we're trying to make it level. I'm hoping to get a place for the kids to play, and if the hospital has programs or something, we'll have like a place to gather that's fenced in. It's almost half an acre, and so the hospital staff who really don't make a living wage, they're going to farm back there. So it's nice to have protected farms where people aren't going to come pick your stuff. In the construction process, they used a lot of gravel, and this is probably the routine thing that I see that I feel the saddest about is gravel is often made by hand. So all of these piles of gravel are dug out by hand, and then people sit in the sun for 8-10 hours a day, pounding rocks with hammers until they make gravel, and then they sell gravel for pennies. And entire groups of people do things that machines do. So It's difficult to see in the picture, but you can see that dark figure is an adult sitting there pounding gravel, and then the kids are just wandering around playing on the piles of gravel. So education is really important for everyone, because you have kind of daily reminders of what happens if you're not educated. Liam goes to daycare, preschool, nursery is what they call it. This is our new commute now that we have a back door. So we don't walk on the street anymore, which is really nice, because the most dangerous thing for us in Sierra Leone is not crime, it's definitely traffic. That's the most dangerous thing for us. So taking the back road is pretty nice. But the stream is where people pile their trash, and a lot of people don't have toilets, and so they poop in the water because the stream takes it away. So we try to be careful when we cross the water, and we wash our hands. Here's Liam at school. This is his birthday, and the one white kid sits up by the teacher, and all the black kids sit on the floor and look at him. He is doted and loved on, and equally to their own children. After school, his teacher takes him to her house, and so here's how I found Liam, just chilling in the yard with all the Africans, drinking their juice and having a great time. So seems like a good life. Here's school in the village. So there'd be one teacher here. The kids don't have books. They just kind of squint at the blackboard. There's no windows, there's no doors. So that's village school. This is what I would call like a decent school. So this is the school attached to Liam's nursery. Still no lights or electricity, so you got fenestrated cinder blocks. People value education so much that this kid is an orphan, and he made good grades, and he walked around with his report card just knocking on doors until he came to the hospital, and he showed up at the front gate, and he lied at the front gate, and he said, "I have an appointment with the doctor," just hoping to find the richest person. And he came to me and he's like, "Can you fund my education?" And I said, "Sure." People give me money occasionally for education, and so we've been funding his education for about a year now. He's found somebody to live with, and he makes good grades. And you know, his name is Augustine. He's just so driven to learn that he will go as an orphan, knocking from door to door to door, just hoping to find someone to fund his education. So, to all the people who have donated to that, thank you. Here's also the school outside connected to Liam's nursery. So those school buildings we saw the inside of are on the left there, and you can see on the right, lunches are being prepared. A big pot on some stones with some firewood underneath. So deforestation is a big problem, but people can't afford propane, so you push together some rocks and you cook on the fire. Even at the hospital, at the canteen at the hospital, that's how they cook for us there. The woman who takes care of Liam, her name is Lucinda, and she works really, really hard to take care of Liam. It's wonderful. Liam's birthday, even though we by far are the wealthiest people around, people love to dote on our children. So they got a picture of Liam off of Rachel's Instagram or Facebook or something, and they made him a shirt with his face on it for his birthday. And it was really nice. All of the neighborhood kids came to Liam's birthday, and sometimes neighborhood kids will come over and read. And the interesting thing is for Liam's birthday, word just got out that we were having a party. And so random kids would just show up and knock on the gate and be like, "We're here for the party." And so we always make extra food. We always make extra goodie bags, because you never know who's going to show up, and it's fun. One of my favorite birthday traditions that they have is they cut the cake like 30 times. And the tradition is every important person in your life, you take a picture cutting the cake with them, almost like a wedding, I guess. So Alfata is an accounts staff at the hospital, and at morning worship, all the hospital staff, and we all took a picture with Alfata cutting her cake again and again and again. We have a good community in Sierra Leone. There are maybe I don't know, 8, 10 families, missionary families from all around. We're the only Adventists that we know of, Adventist missionaries, so lots of non-denominational churches and other things. And we get together and we've got international church 1 or 2 Sundays a month. So here's our Christmas program. We look like so many because we have lots of kids. Some families have 4 or 5 kids. We organized the first national Smash Brothers tournament in Sierra Leone. It's a video game, so we sat together and played video games. It's interesting working and living with other missionary folks because, well, just foreign folks, I guess, because everyone's there for a different purpose. And so we have friends who work at the embassy, and their lives are much, much different than ours. We actually have never been into the embassy because the embassy is super duper strict about entrance. Like, you can't take your phone, you can't take anything, just a pen and paper, and that's it. Even for Americans, your passport. They had a thing at the pool, and the only way you could get your stuff into the pool on the embassy compound was you all had to meet beforehand and put it into the employee, the person who works for the embassy, into their car, and they could drive it in, and then you had to walk through the gate, and they checked all your pockets and make sure you didn't have anything. So we visit the outside of the embassy, not the inside. We've got people that we play games with. So on the left you see the Birches. We've got a standing game night with them, and we put our kids to bed and we play board games until late at night. Community also involves an international community. So on the right you see David Scow. He's a friend from college, and he came on a rotation. He's a medical student, and so we have people that we know come and visit us. It's very nice. And we only do tourism things when strangers come. So we've been in the country for 4 years, and we've never visited this nature preserve. And it was a great time. We were supposed to have 2 canoes, and the other guy with the other canoe didn't show up. So the guy would find bamboo to push us along, and if he didn't have bamboo, he had a shovel in the back. I don't have a picture of it, and his oar was a shovel. And we spent an hour going downstream, and then it came time to go home, and we had to go upstream, and we were too heavy in the canoe. And so he's standing in the shallow water trying to drag this big wooden canoe over the rocks. And I thought, oh, this is the real experience here. So it's always fun having visitors. At the hospital, we've got roughly 60, 70 staff, if you count everybody from security to janitors to different people. And the hospital, I'll call it a nice hospital. So we've got a bit of art, we've got these tunnels. They feel like tunnels in the rainy season. All the sidewalks are covered, and in rainy season the rain just pours down, and so with these sheets of water coming down, you feel like a hamster in a tunnel maze or something. Gardening and landscaping is extremely rare, so missionaries before us paid somebody to plant shrubs and trees, and so it does feel very peaceful compared to the rest of the developed parts of the country where it's just like dirt. Sierra Leone is still in a stage where nature is dangerous. Nature is the enemy, right? And so long grass and bushes, that means snakes, and that means rats, and that means these things that can hurt you and harm you. And so, here in the U.S., we try and live near a park, and there it's like, no, pavement. That's the answer, because the relationship with nature is much different. In a traditional Sierra Leonean hospital, the patient gets the bed and the family member sleeps on the floor. So I worked a night shift once. I don't work that many night shifts, and I knew it intellectually, but I got to see it now. And the family has to be there because the nurses, we have such bad patient to nurse ratios that the nurses really just give meds, and that's it. So if the bed linens need to be washed or changed, that's the family's responsibility. If the patient needs food, the family members have to go out and find food and bring food to the patient. If it's tablets that the patient is taking, the nurse will just dump a fistful of tablets and say, make sure the patient gets this. So family members are key, and we don't really have space for them. Our staff, they work really, really hard. So this man in the white facing away from us is CHO Abu. He's been at the hospital almost 25 years now, and me and him were walking around talking about administrative stuff, and the nurse pulled him aside and was like, hey, we can't find this IV. So we take the child outside because there's more light outside, so he's sitting in like a veranda type place, and he's trying to find an IV in his kid's head, and medicine calls at any time. We practice medicine from the 1960s, so we use asthma medicines that you never use here, tablets and stuff, and paper charts, and it's exciting. The staff really do a good job. So here's Liam getting stuck by the lab. All the sharps and everything, they've got their own containers, but we have just a tank buried in the ground for our sharps because we don't want people getting stuck with needles. So on the right, his name is Checker, and he takes all the trash and he sorts it by hand. And metal goes here, it goes into the tank in the ground, glass goes here, maybe you can resell that. He's standing in front of his incinerator, so everything that can get incinerated goes in the incinerator. And it's a full-time job, basically collecting and sorting trash, and he does it without complaining. So we've got really good staff. The medical staff are always eager to learn, so the part of my job that I enjoy the most is probably education, teaching the staff about stuff. You can see us talking about x-rays. So the staff we have are called CHOs. They're advanced practitioners, just like PA or NP, somewhere between nurse and doctor. And where they trained, they had never ever seen x-rays before. So when we got a new x-ray machine, we had to talk about everything about x-rays. When do you order x-rays? What do you see on x-rays? What does the heart look like on x-rays? And it's exciting. It's exciting to give people new tools and new knowledge that's going to outlast us. It's not just the people of Sierra Leone that benefit from the x-ray machine. Liam is an older brother, and we found him playing with Jude, and there were lots of coins, and we didn't know how many coins had started, and Jude had coins in his mouth. And so we're like, oh, really glad we have an x-ray machine. So we just walk on down to the hospital, and we did a little x-ray, and he was fine. Didn't have any coins in there, but we are very happy to have our x-ray machine. On the right is a patient that we're really glad we had an x-ray machine for. So air on a x-ray is supposed to be black. So this is a chest x-ray, and you can see one side has air in it and the other side is just completely filled with pus. This is a 12-year-old girl who had been sick for 6-8 months up in the village, and then tried all the witch doctor stuff and the herbs and drugs off the street, and it just wasn't getting better. It wasn't getting better. You can see, on the right, on the x-rays, right, the patient's left, the heart is almost touching the edge of the rib cage. The heart is supposed to be midline, so that the pus is actually like pushing the heart out of position. So we dropped a chest tube in there, and we drained a bunch of pus out. We got 4 liters out of her chest in 24 hours. And the sad part is her lung is collapsed. So now on the left side of the x-ray, which is the right side of her chest, you can see some really black stuff. That's just empty space, and then that triangle looking thing is the lung that has collapsed, and the lung is stuck in some kind of scar tissue. So we gave her a month in the hospital. The father was begging to go home because every night you sleep in the hospital, the bill goes up, and I'm like, she might not, ever be able to work or do heavy labor again unless we do the right thing. And thankfully we've got donors who, support these kind of things. I'm extraordinarily blessed that I don't ever have to turn people away from money because we have such good donor support. I get to be a doctor and treat people the way I want to, and her lung probably will be collapsed forever because there's nobody in the country who can operate inside the chest. We even had mercy ships. I don't know if you know about mercy ships. Mercy ships came and they don't have anyone who can operate inside the chest. And so, you know, we did the best thing for her, and we gave her the best shot, and the father was begging to go home, and then eventually he just disappeared because he was like, they're gonna stick me with this bill, you know, I want her to get treatment. And so he went off to his farm and left a sister or somebody who didn't have money. He left them in the hospital so that when it came time to discharge, then you know, there's no money because the man is out working to make money. So, but we got to do the right thing for her, which is exciting. We see lots of difficult cases. So the kid on the left is, I don't know, maybe 8, maybe 10, and his grandmother, same kind of story. She was up in the village, got a wound working on the farm. The grandmother was working on the farm or walking through the jungle or something, and got a big infection, and they tried all the witch doctor things, or they put dirt and leaves and stuff in the wound, and she ended up with an abscess all the way from her hip down past her knee. And you know, because of poverty, everybody has to spend all their time working, right? If you don't go to work now, your children, your family, they won't eat tonight. It's hand to mouth, right? And so they didn't have any adults to leave, and the grandmother didn't speak Creole, which is the English-based language. She only spoke the tribal language. And so this 10-year-old kid is the primary caregiver, helping her get up and down out of bed because she's got a huge wound where we drained this abscess. He was translator. He worked really hard. And we've got a lot of difficult cases. On the right is Rugi. She helps with our HIV patients, and I'm really happy to have someone culturally translate that for me. Security is a big issue. Mark on the left is our security guy, and controlling the gate is really hard. Here's another picture of Abu, just because I love Abu. He's so happy. We run a mobile clinic, and so we go out into the villages because transportation is really expensive. Even our staff, we just did salary raises a couple of months ago, but before we did the salary raises, I went around and I did a poll, and I asked people, how much are you spending on your commute to work? And our lowest paid staff, they were spending 50% of their income on their commute to work because transportation is just so expensive. It's cheap for me, but relatively expensive for people who have Sierra Leonean jobs. So the mobile clinic, even though they're within driving distance, they might never bring their family to the hospital just because it's too expensive. So we run a mobile clinic, we go out into the villages, people walk for miles around to come to mobile clinic, and they bring their beautiful children. The target population for our mobile clinic is any child under 5 and any pregnant or lactating mother. So it's a fun time. You see lots and lots and lots of cute kids and crowds pressing around. We recently got a donation of a new vehicle, so you feel really cool driving around in your 4-wheel drive Land Cruiser, brand spanking new. And then we had our board members come, and our board members are from California. So on the far left is Danjuma, he's a Nigerian, and then the other white guy in the pink shirt, he's Rusty Oft. He works at Loma Linda and chairs our board in his free time. And we put them in our brand new vehicle, and we said, okay, we're going to drive you to Liberia because you also take care of the hospital in Liberia next door to Sierra Leone. So we put them in our brand new vehicle, and then I get a call, and they say the vehicle has crashed. And in Sierra Leone, you don't get to start driving until you're an adult. And you only drive old, beat up cars. And so a car that doesn't feel like it's not rattling itself to pieces at 80 miles an hour, drivers don't understand that, cars are dangerous. They've never practiced it, right? And I realized, contemplating this accident, that, I had a battery-powered car as a child that I would drive around in the driveway, right? If that's beginning to practice driving, even as a child, I had sometimes as much skills as the people who are driving now. And so we were really sad that our car got totaled. Thankfully, nobody died. So the Americans, cuts and bruises. The union president was in the front seat, and he had bilateral exposed. He had bones sticking out of his legs everywhere, and he spent 5 months in the hospital, something like 4 surgeries. So we are just so thankful that the new car saved their lives. We were able to rebuild the car, and so we're back to doing mobile clinics again. Sierra Leoneans are spectacular at fixing broken things because they don't get new things, you know. So our new thing is now a used thing, but we're continuing to do the work that the car was intended for, and we're just so incredibly thankful for that. It's a big wound. It's not a bunch of blood and guts, but it is like a pretty big wound coming up. This is one of the kids that we found on mobile clinic. She had a big old abscess. We see lots of abscesses, I'm realizing. Treated again by witch doctors and things before she came to the hospital. Absolutely needed a skin graft to cover that, but we don't have anyone who can do a skin graft. We don't have the tools for that. So she's another case where she spent months in the hospital getting all the dressing changes, and Sierra Leoneans are really good about coming back to say thank you, and the mother brought her back maybe 2 years later, and she's doing great. So sometimes you don't know what happens to people, and it's always nice to have follow-up and, you know, see that the work that we're doing helps out. This is Momo. He is one of our CHOs, and he is probably a better employee than I am. He is the kind of guy who studies on his own in the middle of the night. He writes reports and has them on time, even though nobody's reading them or asking for them. He is just supremely motivated, and he applied to medical school 2 years in a row and didn't get it in, didn't make the cut, and this year he made it into medical school. And the hospital offered to pay his tuition in like a year-for-year study leave agreement. Annual tuition for him, I think, is like $500 a year. So super expensive for them when a daily wage is $1 a day, $2 a day is what people make. But it's sad to lose our staff for 10 years. He was super key. He was running our ultrasound department. He ran all the inventory. He worked night shifts. We had to hire like 3 people to replace one guy. But he's going to be a great asset for the hospital in 10 years' time or so. Thankfulness is a huge deal, and so it's rare. I don't think we've ever had it before, but he asked to come for dinner. He's like, hey, can I come to your house? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And he brought his mother because his mother wanted to say thank you for supporting my son and making sure he'll get a medical education. And so so that's Momo, and his wife is standing next to me and their child, and then his brother and mother. So we're really excited and proud of Momo. Life just is full of chaos a lot of times, and you never know where it's going to come from. This is our night security. His name is Usman. Security, they have multiple jobs. We get them to help out in a lot of ways. So, you know, if the baby's crying and wants to be rocked and held, oh, here, can you help us with this? Or, you know, gardening, or, you know, 10 minutes walk, 5 minutes walk, there's a place where they sell bread. We give them a bit of money and say, hey, can you go buy some bread for dinner or whatever? So Usman does a lot for us, and we trust him with anything. And he came to me one day and he's like, I've got a really bad pounding headache. And I fell, you know, maybe like 2 weeks ago. And I said, okay, well, maybe you've got a post-traumatic migraine or something. So I give him lots of pain meds, and he's just not better. He's not better. And then his story starts to change, and he starts to tell me, like, different things. He's starting to not remember, and I'm like, this is weird. This is not a migraine. I've done everything I can do. A CT scan in Sierra Leone is maybe $200, $300. Like, not cheap, but not like stupidly expensive like it is here. And I thought to myself, I am gonna regret it my whole life if, the guy who holds my children every night, we don't do the right thing for him. So we did a CT of his head, and we don't have any light boxes, so anytime I have to look at these films, I hold them up to the sun. So here's a picture of me holding this thing up to the sun, taking a picture with my phone. And the brain is supposed to be symmetrical. And so the bottom row, those ones on the left, are probably the most obvious. You can see that on the right side, there's black stuff, and on the left side, there's not. And you can see that white line down the middle is shifted. He fell and had a brain bleed, and he was bleeding into his head. And it was crushing his brain enough that the radiologist, Raymond Krause, I sent this to Raymond Krause, and he's like, yeah, you have to be worried about this guy because there's so much pressure in his brain that it's starting to push the brain out where the spinal cord is supposed to go. And like that matches the part of the brain that controls, breathing and consciousness. And so he's like, he very well could die from this. And there's no neurosurgeons in the country. And so now I have a diagnosis, but I don't have any way to treat it. And so we just gave him tons and tons of medicine to try and stop bleeding. I just looked on the resource and I'm like, what's the highest dose I can safely give? And we gave the highest dose for like months, like 3 months. One of the problems of working in Africa is people don't do research on bad medicine, right? The correct answer here is you drill a hole in the head and you let the blood out, and then when it stops bleeding, you patch it up and you're done. It's complicated, but it's not that complicated. But because we don't have that, nobody does research on how do you use medicines to do the wrong thing. And so I spend a lot of my time guessing, because why would you ever research something that you should never do? So we just kind of guessed at the medicines, and he was at the hospital, and he kept getting up and talking to people. Sierra Leoneans are really like social creatures. And I was like, no, you are on strict bed rest. You are making yourself worse. You have to stay in bed. And he just kept, like, there were so many people around that he knew. He just wanted to get up and, help out. So I was like, no, you can't do this. You have to come live in our house. And so we made him a bed in our garage. I put carpet down so it was less like a garage. And I was like, there's nobody here. You're not supposed to do anything. Just rest. Oh, and we put his bed at an angle to help decrease the pressure. And he was there for a couple of days. And then one day he heard somebody knocking at the gate, and he knows he's a security guy. And so he got up to answer the gate, and he got lightheaded, and he was starting to fall down. Our laundry lady was there. She grabbed him and got to the porch. And then he was leaning on the porch, and then he just collapsed, and he hit his head again on the way down. And I was like, that's it, you're fired. You're going back to the hospital because I'm not having you die on my compound. And over the next few weeks, he got better and better and better. His boss, so he's contracted through a security company. The security company said, no, we're firing him. He's too high risk. We can't employ him anymore. And I'm like, really? I paid all the medical bills, I did everything, and you're going to fire a guy because he had an accident? And I'm like, yeah. And luckily we were able to talk him out of that. And he had amnesia a month later, 6 weeks later. We were talking about the experience, and we asked, do you remember that Fernando, let you stay at his house? And he's like, no, you didn't. And we opened the garage door, and we're like, here's the bed where you were sleeping. We hadn't taken it down yet. And the bed, we made a bedside table for him, and he's like, oh, I was looking for that, and he was finding lost stuff. So we're just so happy and thankful that Usman is alive. And I think it's a miracle that he's alive because that's bad brain bleed. We spend a lot of time managing medical cases that Sierra Leone can't handle. The woman on the far left is Fatmata Zokar. She works at our hospital, and her daughter Haja she's probably 14 now. but she had something called a skiffy, where the head of the femur slips off at the growth plate. And stateside, it's not like emergency, like you get operated the same day, but it's like urgent. You got to be in the OR in like a week. They couldn't find any surgeons. They went to every surgeon they could find. Well, there's no orthopedic surgeons in the country. They waited a year till we found out there was an Egyptian doctor who would come do it for like $4,000, the first surgery of who knows how many. And there's no way that she would ever be able to pay that. She took out the biggest loan the hospital has ever given, and we're deducting from her salary for like the next 20 years. And so, you know, we were able to raise some donations for her. I called the peds ortho guy, Evan's dad, and he gave me some good advice, and we got some donations. And there's Zokar literally carrying the weight of her work. That is probably 20 kilos, maybe like 40 pounds of money to the account's office to pay for this surgery, because the biggest bill that they have is worth less than $1. So if you're going to pay $3,000 worth of surgery, it's like bags and bags of money. So she got the surgery, and we're waiting for the bone to heal, and we'll see how it goes. But we're just so thankful to have people who support us and the people we love, because, you know, this kid, the femur would just kind of slowly die and rot away if we didn't do the right thing. So, you know, it's nice to give people a chance. More donation stuff. This church has donated a significant amount of money to upgrade our lab. These are some of the things we're buying for the lab, just kind of example photos, because we're sending out the money this month to upgrade the lab. We're super excited about it. Right now, people are, when I tick one box, and it's a WBC count. And what that means is the lab has to draw blood, and then they put it on a slide, and then they stain it, and then they look into a microscope, and they count to 100 manually each thing. And I'll order that like on almost every patient, maybe like 60-80% of the patients. That's just me. So the lab right now is spending hours and hours and hours manually counting cells when a computer can do it in seconds. So thanks to the donations from this church, we're automating our lab. And so we're hoping to get our wait times down from 4 hours. Right now, if you come to clinic, sometimes you wait for your labs 4 hours. And we are hoping to open up the lab to let other people in the community send their patients to us, so that we can get a bit of extra revenue for other patients that we're not seeing. So we are super excited about this. There is a lot of work for me still to do, because one of the tests we can do is a thyroid test. Do you have a low or high thyroid? So right before I left, I was polling the CHOs, and I'm like, okay, who knows what a TSH is? Crickets. Okay, who knows what the thyroid does? What are the symptoms of a high or low thyroid? Nobody knows. Who knows where the thyroid is in the body? Nobody knows. So it's going to be really exciting to get back and like expand people's minds and use all this new equipment. So it's really going to help. Power is a big issue. We've got another donation for power. The country is supposed to be standardized to 220 volts. It's a British type power, and routinely the government can only put out 160 volts because their power stations are just so overloaded. And so we're working on buying some things to stabilize power for the whole hospital. Because right now, computers, batteries, machines, they're in constant state of brownout. And even light bulbs, we buy cheap Chinese light bulbs, and they just can't handle the power fluctuations. So we're going to stabilize our power soon. And it's been years of like fundraising and planning and finding the right people and making sure that, you know, you do the right thing with people's donations. This picture, these are our hospital staff. So this is the accountant and our engineer. And I just asked them to go look at an installation from our vendor, just to make sure the vendor actually has the things that he says he has, and we don't send him money and, you know, it's a fraud or whatever. And while I've been stateside, they send me this picture of the accountant in his hard hat and his yellow vest. Even though they're on somebody's hospital compound, it's not like they're in traffic or anything, but they want to dress the part of engineers. So it's very exciting. We had some visitors in January. The Seared family came and got to see day-to-day life for us, and it was a really nice time. Cousins are great, and the women and children stayed at home, and John and I went on a trip up into the far north of Sierra Leone where the deepest Muslim groups are. This mission trip is funded with a group out of Texas. It's a church, and they fundraise like $20,000-$30,000 of free medicines, and they send people over, and we saw like almost 1,200 patients in 3.5 days, and it was just me and one other doctor and then some PA students. They hadn't even finished PA school. So like, it was us seeing all the medical patients, and then John did dentistry along with a nurse who's trained as a dental person, and they pulled hundreds and hundreds of teeth. And it's a really great ministry because the idea is that we take whatever equipment we have. They've got these really cool Pelican cases that hold all the dental stuff. You just carry one case for everything. So we do our part. We bring our machines and expertise. They do their part, and they tie together with vines and sticks and leaves. That's the structure of our consultation rooms. And the church picks Christian missionaries who are living in these deep Muslim villages, and we don't do any evangelism. We give credibility to the missionaries who are already there, the Sierra Leonean missionaries who are already there. And we say, the Christians brought us, the Christians called us here, they've got your best interests at heart, and we're just here to give free medical care. And people will walk for days and days and days to come. On the left is the waiting room. So we would routinely have hundreds of people turned away every day because we just can't see everybody. And while they're waiting, the pastors do evangelism and health talks, and they play the Jesus film, and it's a good time. Here's John posing with the chief. This is the first time we've been to this village, and this is not just a village chief, but like a district chief, which is a big deal. And he is the only district chief that is Christian. And he had lots and lots of stories about how terrible life was before Christianity came. Lots of terrible things happened to pregnant women and children based on witchcraft and those kind of things. And he's like, just worshiping God and not doing evil things, infant mortality has gone down without any like medical intervention. So the people are beautiful and wonderful and wear eclectic clothes, and there's hardly any power up there. And so when all these strangers come into town, the white people are the entertainment. So wherever you go, you've got people watching you. People, it's crazy. People literally walk 4 days to come, like 3-4 days on foot, just because they heard there were free medicines. And people of all ages come. And it's a bit of change of quality of life for us. So, we do bucket showers, and the way that we get our water for our bucket showers is they take a 50-gallon drum and they dip it in the creek, and then they pull it out and they put it up, and here's your shower water. So you can see a little minnow in our shower water there, because poor guy got sucked up into the shower water. Life seems hard when you're showering with minnows in your water, but here's John struggling to do day-to-day life of the Sierra Leoneans who live there, and John can't keep up with women. So, and I say that because I didn't even try, because I already knew that I couldn't keep up with women. So it's interesting to feel like, bucket showers are so hard, and it's crazy to have fish in your water, but we can't manage day-to-day life for them. Bucket showers are nothing. This woman is in the village doing her thing, and part of their living is they smash nuts with rocks, and She just sit there all day getting the shells off of nuts. And my life is easy, compared to how these people live, and it's nice to give them a hope. They've only not got hard lives. They have to worry about spiritual things as well. It's easy to forget how deep the darkness goes in places that are unreached. So here's a picture of the people evangelizing the crowds, and there's a lot of opportunity for ministry. And so the medical people, we are just running through patients as fast as we can because we'll never see them all. But the pastors are kind of happy that there are big crowds waiting for us because it's a big opportunity for them. This is the first year that we've heard testimonies from the pastors who are evangelists out in these regions. So this is the group of Sierra Leonean missionaries to their own country. And this is the first year. We've been doing this 5 years now. And this is the first year that we've heard their testimonies. And I genuinely don't remember who it was, but one of these guys in these pictures, he stood up and told his testimony, and he said, before Christ came into my life, he was the head witch doctor for the district. And there was no spiritual thing that ever happened without his permission and participation. He's like, other people would try and do witchcraft, and it wouldn't succeed unless I was there. And he's like, I was connected with the darkness. He's like, my power was huge. He's like, the depths of dry season. If you gave me an acceptable sacrifice, I could bring down rain in the dry season. Like, dry season lasts for 4 or 5 months, 0 rain. And he's like, if you give me 2 or 3 children that I can sacrifice, I can bring down rain anytime, anywhere. And he stood there admitting to being basically, child murderer. And he's like, that's all behind me because Christ came into my life. And he's like, I'm a wanted man. I can never go home ever again because these people want me dead because I have betrayed the ancient spirits. I have betrayed the ones who gave me power. And he's exiled from his family, from his home forever. And he's always looking over his shoulder because he never knows, what's coming. And, it's a real battle. There's a real spiritual battle going on. And there are, to me, I don't notice these kind of things unless people explicitly tell me these kind of things. So I see a man in a cool hat, and I'm like, hey, I want to take your picture in this cool hat. And so, I see him walking around the clinic, and I'm like, please wait. And I take a picture of him in his hat, just because I've never seen a hat like that before. And then the people running the clinic, they tell me afterwards, yeah, he's the head witch doctor for the region. That's a spiritual hat. That signifies dark power, and there are rituals around everything, and there are special ceremonies that have to happen to have him remove his hat. Like, he's supposed to always wear that hat unless the proper procedures are done to nullify whatever spirits to take the hat off. And they're like, what you don't realize is that this region is changing so fast that when we first came, we prayed a Christian prayer, and he took off his hat for prayer because that's what the Christians do. And so, like, at the very beginning of this mission project, the significance of somebody taking off their hat, I had no idea. But to see that, the dark powers are waning in places, and it's really, really encouraging. So obviously, after all the death and darkness and dying, we go to the beach because you got to decompress. And so Julie and John came to the beach with us, and we had a very nice time. And the beach is a wonderful place to think and reflect. And I have, since I've been here last, my mind has really been on like the body of Christ and institutions and groups of people. What does it mean to be the body of Christ? You know, at this mission trip, there are people from Texas, and there's us and the Sierra Leoneans, and we're all working together, and we don't all believe the same things. We worship on different days, and different parts of Scripture are important at different levels to, you know, different parts of us, and the body of Christ works from around the globe to fight these powers of darkness. And it's coming from an individualistic society like the U.S., where individuals are what's important, thinking about institutional things and the body of Christ. That's what's been on my mind. And, you know, I'm a part of an institution. I've only been in Sierra Leone for 5 years, and now, except for Abu, who you see sitting next to me, I'm the second longest serving member on our administrative committee. Like, somehow, all of a sudden, I'm the one who holds the institutional knowledge, you know, and I spend my time fighting about light bulbs and pay increases and how do we change our prices for the pharmacy. Our target population is poor people. We need to raise prices because we're losing money hand over fist, but can we really squeeze more money from this community? And, you know, a lot of the work that I do doesn't feel like ministry, doesn't feel like it affects people. And I'm torn between this face-to-face, seeing patients, helping people face-to-face, which helps one person, versus the slow, boring work of building an institution that's going to outlive me, right? It's really easy to hate on institutions. You know, it's really easy to look at, you know, church politics or work politics or school politics or whatever and be like, man, institutions suck, people make bad decisions or whatever. But, you know, so much of what I do would not happen without support from groups of people. You know, how much of all of the things I've talked about here are the body of Christ coming together as a group of people. It's, you know, it's a group project, and everybody hates group projects, you know. And we're not always doing it well. This is a kid who died because we didn't have power, just because the generator was down, somebody didn't think to buy fuel, you know, whatever. But we're working, and our staff, they work late into the night, and it's easy to forget that the boring things are important. And that goes for church, you know, like all of this spiritual stuff. And the answer is not necessarily medicine for the body, it's medicine for the soul. And, you know, supporting the church, participating, it seems boring, but it's much more important to me these days. And, you know, to have a church that supports you, no matter where you are, is it's encouraging to know that people are praying for you, and that you know, almost every dream I've had for the hospital, we've found money for. Like, if I'm passionate enough about it, I've never gone more than a couple of years without running into money for something. And so the boring work, the donations, they're important, and they do good things. And I've worked to take a step back from my individualistic mindset of what can I do, you know, church being about me and my connection, more to like there's synergy, there's power in institutions and corporations, and that goes for dark powers too. This is the road directly in front of our house. I'm standing in my front gate, and that guy holding the square thing. The square thing is some kind of spiritual emblem, and the person behind him is all dressed in red. He's got a mask, and there's another one on the left in blue. They call these demons, and these are witch doctors and spiritual darkness parading through the streets of Waterloo, and they do their tribal practices and customs, you know, outside of our front gate. And I think it's important to know that I do feel like there are institutions of darkness that need to be stood against as well. You know, just like institutions support me, there are institutions that support darkness as well. And, it's easy. You never want to swing too far, right? I've been thinking a lot about institutions and building and working together. But, this one guy is the spiritual leader, and he took his hat off, One-on-one engagement with people in positions of power, changing one heart does make a big difference, And so there's always some way to help, whether it's on an individual level or a corporate level. It's pretty common knowledge, especially in Africa, that if you can convert a chief or an imam or somebody, people follow. So I'm starting more and more to see not just individual skirmishes between light and darkness. I'm starting to see more of the bigger picture of the battle. The guy in the wheelchair, a witch doctor, treated his leg, and now his leg is rotting off, and that's a system pushing their agenda. In the middle was Dr. Kamara. He volunteered at our hospital just to learn, and I trained him and I taught him some stuff, and we sent him out to do good medicine. This woman is here for Women's Day in church, and we're all part of different groups in lots of different places, and the boring things are important, and it's easy to focus on one-on-one things, but I really do believe that unity and cooperation within groups of people, that makes the biggest difference overall, right? The things that I'm doing on the administrative side are going to help more people than throwing blood pressure medicines at one patient, but you have to do what feeds your soul too, and service to others is really, really important. So a few texts that I had to think about these things. 1 Corinthians 12, for just as the body is one and has many members, all are members of the body. Though many, one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks or slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one Spirit. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and on those parts of the body that we think less honorable, we bestow the greatest honor. And our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, that there may be no division among the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, we all suffer together. If one member is honored, we all rejoice together. In Ephesians 6, so 1 Corinthians 12, to me, encapsulates, the body of Christ. We're all working together. But we also have, individual responsibilities as well. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, authorities, cosmic powers, and spiritual forces. And so we have individual responsibilities as well. I didn't put it on the slide, but John 17 is one of Christ's prayers, and he says, I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may be as one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they may also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. And he basically goes on to say, unity is how people know that we are Christians, that we carry the love of Christ and that Christ loves them. So I guess in conclusion, it's been a chaotic time since we've been here last. Huge gains have been made. We are incredibly thankful for all the support we routinely receive, and it makes a difference. It really does. And it's easy to think about, the tip of the spear, the pointy end, as doing all the work, but it's all the work of the entire institution that pushes that mission forward, right? It's easy to focus on what people call heroes or, people out there doing a thing, but, the effective part is supported by an infrastructure, supported by a group, and that is much more apparent to me than it has been before. So we thank you for your support and your prayers, and good things are happening. So if you want to get a hold of us, there's some information there.